Donald Trump once again proving that we are in the greatest timeline, as the CBC's Trump derangement syndrome drives them to delete the tiny cameo that Donald Trump had from the movie Home Alone 2. I kid you not, they had to cut Trump out of the movie. Are they gonna ban every episode of The Apprentice? Now I wanna read for you the story, but this segment has more sinister overtones. You see, you may be sitting in your living room, lying on a couch. Your tummy is full of food, your heart is full of love, the holidays are wrapping up, and now we are being given truly a most humorous and glorious wrap-up to this wonderful holiday. Now I know some of you may not be celebrating Christmas, and New Year's Eve is just around the corner, but with Christmas now behind us, what more do we have to look forward to? Well, we have much. First of all, I think it's absolutely hilarious that they deleted Trump from Home Alone 2. Seriously, I laughed. I had to try and record this a couple times from laughing. But then we get this glorious article from Salon. Hallmark movies are fascist. It's so hard to read. Are fascist propaganda. That's right. Movies about people who are in love and trying to find the perfect gift for Christmas is nothing more than fascist propaganda. The dark, sinister, overt undertones of the holiday season are upon us. Certainly, if they believe Hallmark movies are fascist propaganda, Trump must be excised from Home Alone 2. Think about how insane this is. Why would they do this? Trump exists. You don't have to like the man, but he's in the movie. Man, I gotta admit, it is kind of funny. But it's also kind of scary when you realize, like, they're erasing him from the movie. I don't like where that's going. We did revisionism, going in back and editing movies because certain people said naughty words or did something 20 years later. This is incredible. Let's check out this first story, because this is the more important story, but admittedly, it is relatively short. Like, you get the point once I tell you. The Hallmark thing, fascism, is just the icing on the cake. From the Post-Millennial, CBC deletes Trump from Home Alone 2 broadcast. According to conservative activist Ryan Fournier, the CBC, the state-funded broadcaster of Canada, has edited out President Trump's iconic cameo from their broadcast of the Christmas movie Home Alone 2. Fournier says, CBC TV in Canada has cut Donald Trump's Home Alone 2 cameo out of their broadcast. They're so triggered by him that they had to edit him out of the film. Absolutely pathetic. Now, I'm going to stop here. Hold on. Wait, let's keep going. The claim has been verified by the American news outlet PJ Media, who reports that CBC edited out Trump's cameo from the 1992 movie, and people watching it were quick to report the suspicious omission on social media. Some were outraged, and the snowflakes were thrilled. The deleted scene can be found here. Well, let's do this. I always want to use a third-party fact checker when I go through these, because, sometimes these stories pop up, and it turns out to not be true, and, I just want to make sure that's, clear. Otherwise, they're going to come at me and be like, Tim's spreading fake news or something. They say, many commentators on social media have expressed this particular edit was political. Comicbook.com first reported on the omission, and they reached out to the CBC for comment on why Trump was cut from their Home Alone 2 broadcast. And the CBC replied, as is often the case with features adapted for television, Home Alone 2 was edited to allow for commercial time within the format. Oh, is that the reason why? Okay, I'll just stop there. I will give them the benefit of the doubt. It's just because they want to squeeze in more commercials. Actually kind of makes sense. To be honest, and I'm gonna say the most outrageous and controversial thing, you don't really need the scene with Trump. It's just a cameo. It's him pointing. And if they want to make money, that's where they could probably fit in more commercials. So it falls in line with that good capitalist nature of, we want to maximize profits. We don't care about Trump. However, considering the era in which we live, and the articles like this, the ones that say that Hallmark movies are fascist propaganda, I'm gonna have to assume, maybe they didn't cut out Trump specifically because he's Trump. Maybe they were looking at where can we cut time, and someone was like, there's that scene with Trump, and they were like, oh yeah, get rid of that. So basically my point is, it may not have been on purpose. It may really have been driven by commercials, but let's be real. If they had to look at a series of sections of the film to cut to make time for commercials, you know what their first choice is going to be, and you know why it's going to be Trump. So I think this is a wonderful Christmas present, because here's the thing. I don't really care that they cut him out or that, Salon thinks Hallmark movies are fascist propaganda. It's almost like reading The Onion, I actually want to say this right now. I feel really bad for the guys over at The Onion, the satirical paper. You can't compete with this. Like, you can't. I'm sorry. You can try. You know, the Babylon Bee tries. And you know, the Babylon Bee is really, really funny. It's another satirical paper. But I feel bad sometimes because I'm like, oh, you know, they tried to make a satirical article, but it's actually just literally mirroring the psychotic behavior of these weird woke outrage blogs. Salon has beyond jumped the shark. You know, it's crazy. You know, Glenn Greenwald used to write for Salon. Now, he's a pretty lefty guy, but he calls it like it is. He calls out the FBI, calls out Russiagate. He's not a Trump fan, so I can respect him. And I've got disagreements with some of the stuff he's done in the past, but he used to write for this website, like a credible, you know, left-wing personality who actually published really important information on foreign, you know, on the NSA and surveillance and violation of civil rights and stuff. Now what is it? Hallmark movies. That's what you're concerned about. You know what's insane? I'll tell you what. They don't like the fact that Hallmark movies typically revolve around a white couple dealing with some, you know, chaos over the Christmas, you know, holiday. I don't care. It's not made for you. How insane is it that they can't just be like, so they made a movie about a traditional family trying to find presents on Christmas? Like, does anybody complain about like a movie about Hanukkah? Do we go like, in that film they made that was about a Hanukkah, you know, they had a blonde hair, blue-eyed guy, and that was a caricature of white? No, who cares? It's not for you. It's a world view. It's an experience specific or relatable to a certain group of people. And so what? If you don't like the movie, don't watch it. Man, how insane is it? But I will stop. Okay, this is supposed to be funny, and it is. You know, it's kind of meant to be. Here's what I'm hoping you get out of these articles in this segment is that, you know, you're laying on the sofa, you're probably full. Some of you are probably hungover, maybe had a little too much eggnog or something, and you can wake up with a good hearty chuckle. Maybe you'll laugh and say, isn't the world crazy? Actually, many of you are probably like, this is insane. The world is falling apart. Let's read. Salon says, Hallmark movies are fascist propaganda. Forget Triumph of the Will. The most insidious I can't read it. The most insidious authoritarian propaganda comes in the form of schmaltz. I seriously thought this was a parody. I did. But they don't say it's parody or anything. Like, this is real. They come on, like, this is real, isn't it? Look at this. It's just not, nowhere does it say, like, they're really saying it's insidious authoritarian propaganda. That's right. The woman who misses her flight back to Milwaukee, where her husband is frantic and the family is getting concerned, and then her presents get lost on the plane, and then she's desperately trying to find that new action figure for her, you know, for her niece or nephew. Authoritarian, insidious propaganda. Think about how insane. Look, there's very little difference between Hallmark movies and like Home Alone and like a regular Christmas movie. The reality is Hallmark movies are just kind of lower budget Christmas movies. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's read. They say, the Hallmark Channel has been having a rough go of it the past few weeks. The cable TV behemoth, which has been minting money since with its patented holiday season schmaltz, drew widespread criticism earlier this month when it pulled ads for the wedding company Zola that featured a lesbian couple kissing at their wedding. The company's initial excuse is that they do not allow ads that feature overt public displays of affection, claiming the policy is regardless of the participants. This was obviously nonsense, as couples kissing at weddings is not only the but generally seen as mandatory, and features in the channel's numerous rom-coms. Unsurprisingly, critics quickly found plenty of examples of straight snogging on the channel that shows that sexual orientation was the sole reason for the ad pull. Let me stop there. I don't think it's the sole reason for the ad pull. I think a right-wing pressure campaign was the sole reason for the ad pull, and the lesbian kiss was the sole reason for, you know, the campaign. So I think, you know, talking about the nuance is pretty important. However, I do think it's fair to say that Hallmark pulled this commercial because of the lesbian kiss. People were upset about it, said, oh, you know, we don't like this. And so Hallmark pulled it. Then there was outrage from the other side, and Hallmark then reinstated it. Let me tell you something, though. I don't care if Hallmark pulls it or not. Hallmark's audience isn't the woke left. It's traditional Christians. Like, that's why their movies are made the way they are. So I'll tell you what, you know, Hallmark. Yeah, you're between a rock and a hard place. You know, you decided to run that commercial. You should have just let it run and been like, yeah, well, too bad. You know what I mean? It's a sponsor spot. You know, it's like a commercial for a wedding company, whatever. I don't know. But here's the thing. Hallmark bent over backwards for people who don't actually watch the Hallmark channel. And this is a good example of everything wrong with of the culture war problems we're facing, is that people who don't actually cater, are not actually patrons of a service or business are the ones getting that business to then bend over for those people who don't actually buy the product. Like, you can look at the video games, the comic book industry, the movie industry. You have all these companies being like, a large group of people who don't watch our movies are complaining. Let's change the movies to be for them. How does that make sense? Look, you don't gotta make, like, they should have left the commercial. I think it's fair to point out, we know why they pulled the commercial. But why are they bending over backwards for people who call them fascists? Hallmark then flip-flopped, apologizing for pulling the ads and claiming they have been a progressive pioneer on television for decades and committed to diversity and inclusion. Okay, look, you know what? Rock in a hard place. For whatever reason, the cultural power rests in the woke outrage and not in the traditional conservatives who want to see a Christmas movie, and that's about it. They say, which is of course laughable to anyone who has even glancing knowledge of the channel's offerings. Running down this year's schedule of Christmas movie offerings is like a trip into an uncanny valley of shiny teeth, blow-dried heteronormative whiteness, with only a few token movies with characters of color. It's like watching The Stepford Wives, but scarier, since the evil plot to replace normal people with robots is never actually revealed. None of this should be a surprise, because Hallmark movies, as cloying and saccharine as they are, constitute the platonic ideal of fascist propaganda. Wow. Some of this stuff freaks me out, and I gotta admit, this probably should be freaky to so many people, because the innocuous nature of these silly Hallmark movies, their low-budget Christmas message, is threatening to, basically no one, and they're now calling it insidious, authoritarian, and fascistic propaganda. And there's a certain threshold where, if you say something, it's frustrating. Like, if you accuse Batman of being, racist or something, it's like, oh no, here they go. And it's annoying, right? And then they start saying, well, Batman is a dangerous vigilante, it's very fascistic, and you're like, oh, geez. But once they cross a certain line, like here, like Hallmark movies, it breaks this barrier where things go from being alarming to some of the most hilarious content you'll ever read. So we've definitely crossed that threshold where it's like, if they said something like, Hallmark is under fire for pulling this commercial, there's also concerns about, overly traditional content. If they were much more light about it, saying these movies are a relic of a bygone era, and as times change, we're wondering when Hallmark will start, adapting and trying to cater to new audiences, I'd see that and be like, that's an interesting point, actually, If Hallmark is going to keep doing these, traditional Christmas white family things, look, the fact remains, at a certain point, their market is going to be shrinking, and it's not just because about demographics or anything, it's about what young people are watching and are into. So I'm not saying they have to change. I'm just saying I'd be curious if they will go down that path of now we must start, making certain movies. And apparently there's some article from last year where Hallmark did a Jewish film and they did like a Hanukkah film and they did a black family and stuff. So Hallmark is saying we want to expand our audience here, right? There's no the conversation isn't really about that. The conversation jumps the shark straight away to be fascist propaganda. And so that's why it's just funny, because there's no sane logical argument. It's absurd to me. Well, no. They think everything is fascists, everything's a Nazi, everything's a conspiracy theory, and then they come out here and they accuse the hokey family movie of being fascist propaganda. You could argue this is something people used to watch 20, 30 years ago, and they're just kind of remaking lower budget versions of it. Sure, but this is a whole other level. So I laughed a hearty laugh when I was reading this. Let's read a little bit more. We'll go a little bit longer. They say, that is probably a startling statement to some. When most of us think about fascistically propagandistic movies, we think about the grotesque grandeur of Leni Riefenstahl's film, Can't read this. Okay, but cold sweeping shots of soldiers goose-stepping and flags waving, all meant to inspire awe and terror. But the reality is, even in Nazi Germany, the majority of movies approved by the Nazi Minister of Propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, were escapist and feather-light, with a Hallmark movie-style emphasis on the importance of normality. That's right, Hallmark movies are following in the footsteps of Joseph Goebbels. There's plenty of reason that empty-headed Kish fits neatly in the authoritarian worldview. It's storytelling that imitates the gestures of emotion without actually engaging with real feeling. The Hallmark movie steers clear of the real passion or deeper emotion that tends to be the engine driving more artful fiction. Characters who have real feelings, after all, can prompt empathetic reactions in the audience. And empathy of others is the greatest single threat to the authoritarian mindset. And so Schmaltz walks through the paces. Okay, you know what? Full stop. They're criticizing the movie for being low quality. They're like, B movies have bad actors, therefore fascism. Okay, listen, I'm sorry, Hallmark movies. You're not Hollywood, and I'm not trying to be mean, but we get it. Hallmark movies are hokey and kind of campy, and that's why they're calling it fascist. I thought they were going to say it was because white Christian families having tons of babies and buying presents and celebrating a Christian holiday was why. Instead, they're saying it's because the acting is bad. I'm impressed. All right, I'm going to wrap this one up. I hope you all had a good laugh about Donald Trump being cut out of a broadcast of Home Alone and Hallmark being fascists. Here's what they say. Ultimately, there is probably no way to square the claim to believe in diversity with fascistic impulse that guides the current crop of Hallmark movies, which center always around these frankly MAGA-style ideas about what constitutes real America. As the Jewish movies show, the best that Hallmark can do is some token diversity that wipes out most of what makes people actually diverse. Their money comes from selling a vision of America that increasingly authoritarian conservatives wish to believe once existed and can be restored again. An America that excludes most of an increasingly urban, racially diverse, cosmopolitan nation that won't change no matter how many inclusive Zola ads the network airs. I would like to inform these people at Salon that there are many places in the United States that are overwhelmingly white, traditional, and conservative, because yes, around 67% of the country is white. There are many suburban areas that still are, and even urban districts is the case, and Christianity still is about the same proportion in the country, which means the overwhelming majority of the country is Christian and white. I get it, man. You want to talk about diversity, you want to make a movie for other holidays and stuff, I feel you, totally hear you, but they're targeting their demographic. Just because they are doesn't mean it's fascist propaganda. Look at these photos. It's just like smiling couples eating a donut. That's fat. Okay, you know what, man? These people are off their rocker. I tell you what, I don't care what you celebrate. I don't care, what the movies you make are. If you make a movie about your, Festivus or about some, new holiday you want to do, I'm not going to attack you for it. None of these movies are actually fascist. It's just families eating cake and trying to catch the flight like Home Alone. And then Kevin's mom is hanging out with that John Candy band or whatever, and then the burglars are coming. What are you talking about? Is Home Alone fascist? Because it's very, very similar. It's a white, large Christian family, and their son goes missing, and then the son creates a bunch of weapons to hurt poor people who are just trying to get by. Yeah, we can play the framing game too. Anyway, I hope this was a good morning for all of you. I hope you woke up, some of you maybe, again, hungover, and you see this story and you have a good laugh, and it makes that headache go away. Others, you're probably looking for now that the holidays are coming to an end, the Christmas holidays, and again, I know New Year's around the corner, and now you're feeling sad like my family is left and dinner's over and I have to wait another year. At least you'll get a little bit more humor and laughter and joy before this holiday season comes to an end. I will see you all in the next segment at 1 p.m. Thanks for hanging out.